How do we make the world a better place? We need to look to the future, to search for sound solutions, to create sustainable practices, to embrace emerging energy. Environment-friendly and healthy as they do not emit pollutants. No fuel required, so you save money on gas. Lower maintenance due to an efficient electric motor. Better performance. With all these qualities, an electric vehicle really checks all the boxes. But the question is, what is the future of electric vehicles in the country? Let's find out. I'm your host, Antoinette Toss, and welcome to Emerging Energy, a program that focuses on the energy sector and the impact of conserving energy on a better future for all. Recent years have seen important milestones for electric vehicles. In April 2022, the Electric Vehicle Industry Development Act, or EVIDA, lapsed into law. The Philippines, which is currently dependent on imported fuel, can attain fuel security with the adoption of electric vehicles. Battery electric vehicles also have no exhaust emissions. Thus, it does not harm the environment and people's health. To talk more about the energy efficiency in the transportation sector, we are joined by none other than our resident expert, DOE's Energy Utilization Management Bureau Director, Patrick Aquino. Director Patrick, welcome to the show, and an exciting topic indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for having me again here.
And thank you for being with us. Straight to the topic, the transportation sector is among the different sectors covered under the EEC Act. Now, can you provide us with the current initiatives of the government on addressing the concerns in the sector and for pushing for a more efficient transportation system?
Well, when you talk about transport, you've already indicated that it consumes a lot of energy. It's also the source of a lot of our emissions. So here in the DOE, under the EEC Act, we have instituted several policies and regulations that are coming into effect. One of which would be the Vehicle Fuel Economy Labeling Program, wherein you will be seeing labels also in our vehicles indicating their fuel economy performance rating. So this will empower our consumers to purchase vehicles that are more fuel efficient. You will be seeing this in the next couple of months, Tony. But more importantly, all of this will lead to a benchmarking wherein we'll be pushing our transport sector for more fuel-efficient vehicles. And of course, we had the landmark legislation on EVIDA, or the Electric Vehicle Industry Development Act, last year. We're now pushing for the entire EV industry development. And what we're targeting, at least in our business-as-usual situation, is that 10% of all electric vehicle fleets are electric. And then on a clean energy scenario, it's around 50%. These are all targeted to happen by 2040.
Amazing.
And more importantly, we're trying to power our electric vehicles using renewable energy. So as you've indicated in the most recent issuances on electric vehicles, the DOE will be working with our stakeholders to make that happen so that our electricity powering our EVs are from renewable energy.
That is truly an incredible plan for a better pathway forward. But could you elaborate more on the targets of the government under the National Energy Efficiency and Conservation Plan, or NEECP?
So the NEECP was actually published. It's now in effect. We did consultations on this earlier this year. And since May, we're now outlining the targets for the transport sector. In the short term, we've already achieved our targets. We've issued the regulations with so far as the Vehicle Fuel Economy Labeling Program, VFELP, our Fuel Economy Performance Rating Program also issued. But in the short term, meaning 5 years from now, we're looking at having more increased deployments of electric vehicles. We're also seeing that we'll have recognition of testing laboratories wherein vehicles will now get to be tested on how fuel efficient they are.
That's great.
But the longer term goal is really to drive on consumer behavior towards more efficient transport, and this will only happen by introducing several additional measures. So those are what we have outlined in the NEECP for the transport sector.
Truly, what an exciting journey ahead, since we are now gearing towards electric vehicles. And as you mentioned earlier, we have the Electric Vehicle Industry Development Act, which serves as the backbone of the EV industry in the country. Could you give us a background on this, and how will this have an impact on the current transportation system?
Well, the impact would be really developing an industry. We've issued the comprehensive roadmap for the electric vehicle industry, or CREVI, last April. And we've outlined the deliverables or the tasks and plans for the EV, electric vehicles, and electric vehicle charging stations. DOE is working with the Transportation Department for it. We're working with the Trade and Industry Department on two things under the CREVI. One is on the human resource development. There's also the investment strategy component, wherein our colleagues also from the Board of Investment would like to provide fiscal and non-fiscal incentives for industries, and including you and me, to use more electric vehicles. And finally, because we believe that innovation is driven by science and technology, there's a research and development component wherein our Department of Sciences and Technology is a lead, and they're looking at various things, of which earlier this month in July, we inaugurated the fuel cell testing facility. So we'll be exploring all of these things because fuel cell technology also leads to the possible use of hydrogen and improvements in battery technology that will help us make that transition faster for electric vehicles.
We truly thank the Department of Energy for providing the infrastructure, policies, investments, innovations, and pathways forward so that we can all be a part of a cleaner, healthier, and of course, renewable future. After the break, we'll talk more about the state of the electric vehicle industry, its challenges, and the progress it has reached so far.
Operating costs are inherently cheaper because EVs are less prone to sudden spikes in energy cost. So using EVs is a way to insulate us from the price shocks.
There's this incentive strategy for manufacturing to try to build out that domestic ecosystem to make sure that we have the necessary EV sector to support our aspirations.
We're sparking conversations on the adoption of electric vehicles. But I'm curious, do we already have an electric vehicle industry here in the Philippines, or is it still in its infancy? To enlighten us on the topic, we are joined by Mr. Frankie Endriga, Chief Operating Officer of the Global Electric Transportation, and our resident expert, DOE's Energy Utilization Management Bureau Director, Patrick Aquino. Now, for Mr. Endrigo, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tony, for having me. Thank you, Director Aquino, also for inviting us.
Now, as one of the leading experts in the EV industry, what are your views on the enactment of the EVIDA and its IRR?
Actually, the EVIDA law was, I guess, a watershed moment for the EV industry. Without it and its IRR, there would be no framework to develop the industry and create that a path forward that would allow investors to come in, give them a defined framework for incentives that any new industry will actually need.
Mr. Endriga, how do you think the EVIDA will contribute to EEC in the transport sector for the short, medium, and long term?
Well, Tony, achieving EEC objectives, well, in the short term, of course, what has to be clear to the early adopters of EVs is that there is a cost advantage in using EVs. And then in the medium and long term, there have to be more investments in the infrastructure that will be needed to support the EVs that people will actually deploy, both as private vehicles and in the public sector, for public transport and for government use.
We did hear a little bit about that earlier from Director Patrick. And you mentioned earlier that the implementation of the EVIDA and its IRR is guided by the CREVI. Could you provide our audience with a summary on the contents of this roadmap?
Well, the roadmap outlines what the government and the private sector and everyone needs to achieve towards our goal of reaching the targets that we've outlined. we've indicated two scenarios. One is a 10% penetration rate for electric vehicles, highlighting with fleets. Another is a clean energy scenario, our more ambitious targets, setting it at 50%. The time horizon for both of these targets, whether we business as usual or clean energy, is 2040. It's anchored now in our ambition natin 2040. So it looks at all of the vital components needed to get a robust EV industry. So we have the deployment of more electric vehicles supported by EV charging stations nationwide. There's a component on making sure that our people are equipped with the necessary skills needed. But of course, as mentioned by Sir Frankie earlier, you have to incentivize it. So one of the key parameters now is that there's this incentive strategy for manufacturing to try to build out that domestic ecosystem to make sure that we have the necessary EV sector to support our aspirations. And then finally, of course, the research and development component. EV industry as a whole is just starting with land transport. We're also looking at possible ways for applications, let's say for maritime and later on even aviation. But we have to work together to get this moving. So that is why we welcome collaborations with the private sector like Sir Frankie, who incidentally started deploying fleet of electric buses through shuttle service even before the passage of the EVIDA. And it's those types of projects that we are really looking forward to expanding with the private sector part.
Mr. Indriga, in line with the implementation of the EVIDA, do you believe the country is ready for the transition to alternative fuel vehicles such as EVs?
Well, Tony, in my humble opinion, I think we are ready.
Wonderful.
We have to look at it from multiple facets. First of all, is bringing EVs to the forefront of public consciousness. And this is what we've been doing in global electric transport. Starting off with corporate fleets by offering a way for their employees to get to and from places of residence or transit hubs using our solution. And then slowly, as the public consciousness builds, we believe that it becomes more acceptable to people and to the general public. Now, from the customer perspective, I think we have to look at two aspects. One is the supply side, which is making sure that we address issues such as cost of acquisition of vehicle. Operating costs are inherently cheaper because EVs are less prone to sudden spikes in energy costs. So using EVs is a way to insulate us from the price shocks of fuel. But what it will entail also is more of the manufacturers and the brands begin to introduce more products to the market at a price point that the customer will consider actually switching. And then on the downstream industries, I think bigger portion of the public transport sector has to continue in adopting it. The government is going to do its part in terms of refleeting. This government has actually been very, very supportive through the POV modernization program. And we have seen that using our proof of concept, we've been able to encourage more of these GP cooperatives to switch to electric vehicles.
Exciting times ahead, everyone. Up next, we'll talk about the overall outlook on the use of electric vehicles.
We started off this segment that transport plays an integral part in terms of moving people. They also consume a lot of energy. And if we're able to efficiently transition that to something more less energy intensive, it helps the environment, it brings down our costs, and overall it helps the economy.
I think it's also giving everyone a platform and an opportunity to participate in energy efficiency and sustainability. And EVs are one of the particular sector that allows people to participate and participate directly.
There are ongoing efforts to reach out to stakeholders in the adoption of electric vehicles. Let's find out what is the general outlook on the use of electric vehicles in the country. Still with us are Mr. Frankie Indriga, Chief Operating Officer of the Global Electric Transportation, and our resident expert, DOE's Energy Utilization Management Bureau Director, Patrick Aquino. Back to you, Mr. Indriga. Given the target of 50% EV share by 2040, how has the transport sector responded to this target, considering that the EVIDA has been in effect for over a year now?
The transport sector, if you take a look at the public transport sector, we have been receiving a lot of inquiries about transitioning to EVs.
That's amazing.
From diesel jeepneys to EVs. It's also interesting to see that a lot of the business sector have been approaching us to transition from internal combustion to EV. So that for us is very, very encouraging.
So, Mr. Indriga, has there been a great push for the adoption of EVs already, aside from what you just mentioned?
We've actually seen a big push aside from private sector. A lot of local government units and national government agencies have been looking at the transition from internal combustion to EVs. And we see it gathering momentum. We also see it from the private sector. A lot of the property developers have been approaching us, wherein they want to improve connectivity between developments and residential areas and transit hubs. And they want to go full EV on these already. So it's very, very encouraging, and we see the momentum building over the next year or so.
For Director Patrick, seeing how players in the transport sector have or haven't already begun to adopt EEC and EVs, are there fiscal and non-fiscal incentives provided under the EVIDA to incentivize or initiate such efforts?
So let's start off with the one that's so popular right now. That's why there's a lot of interest. Top of mind is that it's exempted from the Unified Vehicle Volume Reduction Scheme. So that means there's no number or color coding. You can use it all the time. That's top of the list.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
That's really amazing. The other item, of course, is on trying to bring down the cost parity. So government has been very conscious that there's a price difference between the ICE vehicles and EVs. So as far back as 2017, excise tax for battery electric vehicles has been at 0%. And then for hybrids, it's at 50%. And with Executive Order number 12 signed by President Marcos earlier this year, even the import tariff has been set at 0%. The import tariff reduction would translate anywhere from 100,000 pesos to 500,000 depending on the country of origin, because the import tariff is based on the country of origin. So it's going to be set at 0% for the next 5 years. So all told, we're trying to build out that ecosystem that EVs make sense. And this is not a government program insofar as there are certain mall establishments that offer free electric vehicle charging.
Oh my goodness,
So
wonderful.
if you want to get in on that action, get an electric vehicle with all of these things, the future of transportation and mobility is really electric too.
And before we go, it's time to play the emoji game. Now, this is quite simple. We have some paddle boards here with happy, sad, angry, and neutral faces. And of course, all you have to do is raise the paddleboard, which corresponds to your emotions when we mention the statements. Are you ready?
Ready.
Here we go. How confident are you that the target of 50% shares in the industry by 2040 can be achieved? Ooh, could you expound, Mr. Frankie?
Well, I think there's a lot of work to be done. And a lot of the preparation has to happen today. And it will involve a lot of structural change in the industry and a lot of shifting of the mindset of all of the stakeholders here. Not everyone is on the same page at the moment, and there's work to be done.
Okay, here we go. Next question. How satisfied are you with the current shares of EV in the public transportation fleet? Oh, both sad faces. Oh my gosh, let's begin with Frankie. Could you share why the sad face?
There's still a lot of hesitation and the unfamiliarity with the technology. Although the fiscal incentives are in place, a lot of the government financing is actually already in place. It's a change of mindset for the end user. And that's what we're working on, is to engage with the public transport sector. That's the reason why we invested in our own ecosystem that includes our charging network, our vehicles, and our technology. It's to prove that the technology is robust. It will result in profit.
Yes.
And it benefits all stakeholders.
Director Patrick, why the sad face?
Well, like he mentioned, Sir Frankie mentioned, of course, getting the act together is still part of the challenge. I'll be very candid. Government still needs to do some paradigm shift as well. But there also the communication. EVs are supposed to be no-brainer choices. Faster acceleration, lower cost to operate, it's environment friendly, but you're still seeing some hesitation. There's some misinformation still happening. So I think with private sector partners like Sir Frankie, we'll get the positive message across that EVs really are the future.
Speaking of private sector, the next question, how satisfied are you with the cooperation of the private sector in the adoption of EVs? Oh, happy faces across the board. Director Patrick, please share.
As I mentioned, the private sector is the one starting off that conversation. Even before the passage of EVIDA, they were the ones looking at it, whether from an ESG perspective or whether they're just really environmentalist and sustainability peers at heart. And that's what we need in this country.
Sustainability peers at heart. Wonderful. And next question, how hopeful are you with the future of the transport sector guided by the NEECP? Happy faces across the board again. All right, let's hear the responses from both of you. Director Patrick, why are you happy?
Well, we're happy because it's something, we started off this segment, that transport plays an integral part in terms of moving people. They also consume a lot of energy. And if we're able to efficiently transition that to something less energy intensive, it helps the environment, it brings down our costs, and overall, it helps the economy. Bonus na yung future natin, di ba?
Oh, yes. Totoo yan for people and the planet. Tas may savings pa. Mr. Frankie?
I think it's also giving everyone a platform and an opportunity to participate in energy efficiency and sustainability. And EVs are one of that's a particular sector that allows people to participate and participate directly because transportation is part of everyone's daily life.
That's it for our emoji game. Thank you so much for playing with us. And of course, before we end, may we know your final words and insights, a message to our viewers about EVIDA and EVs. Frankie?
I encourage everyone watching this program and the general public to make sure they're informed, they do their research, and remove all our biases about electric vehicles because this is a game changer. It is going to be a massive paradigm shift for the country, for the environment, and for everyone's lives in general.
Thank you so much, Frankie. Director Patrick, any final message for our viewers?
The message is always from the Department of Energy is that we would like to empower our consumers. We're rolling out programs. We now have a vehicle labeling program. We'll be coming out with a fuel economy performance rating. And we have a strong push for electric vehicles. Being efficient in the transport sector affords us with energy independence. And our message remains to be, you have the power. Energy efficiency starts with you.
That was truly an insightful discussion on the benefits of transitioning to electric vehicles, from health, environment, savings to the country's fuel security. I personally believe it's really important to keep discussions going so we can all find solutions together. Thank you again to our guest, Mr. Frankie Endriga, Chief Operating Officer of the Global Electric Transportation, and to our resident expert, DOE's Energy Utilization Management Bureau Director, Patrick Aquino. Thank you again for joining us for this episode. I'm your host, Antoinette Toss. See you again right here on Emerging Energy, only on CNN Philippines.